are here in a room full of doers. We are switching now in a panel discussion where I'm inviting 3 gentlemen who are actually working on the reality of manufacturing in Europe, digital, creativity, and also where the F is the money, because we need that. No pressure. I'm welcoming now on stage Fredrik Timor from Fashion Innovation Center, Mouhannad Al-Sayegh from Flair Fashion, and surprise guest, we are following the trend, Nachtigall from Amphi. Come on stage. So we have high expectations, right?
You do.
Excellent. Okay, so we'll do a quick introduction. So, Fredrik, I mean, like, for people knowing Fashion Innovation Center, actually back then is because, I don't know, like, do you remember when, like, the Swedish Fashion Council cancelled the Swedish Fashion Week due to the future? Right. And that was your idea, right? For Fashion Eds back in the day?
The funny thing is that the Council Fashion Week got the best press coverage of any fashion week in Stockholm.
So by not running it, you had a better coverage by, well, if you would have run it.
Right.
Okay.
That's at numbers or in quality?
In numbers. Yeah.
And I think it's also like in the mindset of like cancel to the future is what you then started with Fashion Innovation Center. Tell us a little bit about it. You work with the United Nations.
Yeah, I've been working with digitalization of the fashion industry for a very long time. I started as a startup back in the days, and that's actually how I met Mouhannad as well. And where we created microelectronics and software platform for fashion 15 years ago. That was a little bit too early. And we realized quite quickly that there was a need for innovation agency or innovation hub. So we created a Fashion Innovation Center to be an independent innovation hub, to be able to help the industry and cross-collaboration with other industries as well.
And then you ended up, like, was it like 3 years ago at the United Nations? You actually like ran one of the first official fashion panels at COP. It's like that little event where we talk about sustainability and changing the world, right? You know, with the United Nations in Egypt. And I remember we had like journalists there that was all about like, oh, we just need like new materials. And you were just talking about like, do you actually realize we have too much waste?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that it took 25, 26 COPs to bring up fashion, which is one of the biggest polluters in the world. And you have a conference that talks about, sustainability. And it took 25 years to even talk about fashion. That was the first time fashion was brought on the agenda, which is remarkable in itself, I would say.
And I think you have seen, especially like in the last 3 years, especially in like non-fashion publications, fashion is becoming more and more a topic. Like you see like on Reuters, on The Guardian, and I think it was like that concentration started in the last 3 years. So well done. Talking about a very long time, Mouhannad, you know, there is nothing like an overnight success. You are now leading actually like the biggest and best digital lab in Europe.
One of them.
Who's the second one? So we have them all combined. But like that didn't happen overnight.
Do I use the...
No, the both.
Hello, hi. So yeah, thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Fredrik and Troy. This is, by the way, this is the nerdiest panel you would ever see. We've all worked in tech for a long time. I started, actually my background is not really fashion. I came from computer science. I used to have a company doing intelligent homes, building smart homes in London. And then I noticed the potential with fashion and the opportunities around bringing technology and digitization to the fashion industry. So I was working at the London College of Fashion, working in research, working on EU and UK funded projects. And this is how Fredrik and I met 10, 15 years ago. Yeah, this is how old we are. I had a lot more hair. We kind of London College of Fashion was one of the frontier in recognizing the potential of technology, and I had a really great opportunity of kind of building a lab. When we started, it was just like a blank room and just say, do whatever you want. I mean, back in 2009, the technology wasn't something people talk about within the fashion industry. But over the years, it went in every different sectors. So we used to have maybe 2 students a year coming to our lab in the university and asking for how they can use 3D printing and things like that. And now there are hundreds and hundreds of, I don't even recognize all the students that are working with technology at LCF anymore. So definitely expand quite a lot. And yes, we have the best lab in London, in Europe.
But also, like, it's big and it's fantastic. And by the way, if you like, in London, it's actually also publicly accessible. So like, if you come to Stratford at LCF, you can actually go upstairs in a wonderful staircase and have a look in a place where it's completely embedded in the school. And I think that's also like how it should be. And also, besides that, you're running like the best and coolest, fashion shows for independent designers in London, right? So, I mean, like, if somebody wants to come to London, what you do with Flair, also like, what are you doing with Flair, please?
So as much as I'm also working for London College of Fashion, and I've got 2 hats on. I've got the academic hat, working at the university, but I'm also working for the industry. So when I shifted to fashion, I was working with different startups, building different tech. I was a CTO for a startup called Change a Paradigm. We were one of the pioneers in digitizing or kind of looking at how we can bring digital fashion within industry. So we worked with Burberry, Off-White. We were invested by Farfetch. And it kind of, that's really how I realized, as much as, the big brands have a lot of market, innovation really comes from the emerging designers and the graduates. The innovation that we see at the top level is quite surface level. And then when I see innovations coming from students and from the graduates, it's really, really innovative. And they really care about sustainability. They really care about innovation. They care about storytelling and how they can connect with consumers and how they can bring ideas around gender identities and social issues. And this is where where I shifted and started Flair Fashion. Flair is really a platform to help emerging designers, how we can tell the stories of those brands and give them opportunities and bring them up to the big stage. So we do fashion shows with London Fashion Week, and we do many different activities to help more emerging designers be discovered and known.
Fantastic. So, Troy, you're not only like on the jury of this fantastic award, but actually you're a little bit, if I dare say, a little bit like our tech papa.
I've been around a while.
It's a thing typical of Netherlands, Euro papa, and a lot of Eurovision Song Contest.
Both Netherlands.
Awkward German trying to make a joke. So, but just tell me about it, because I mean, fashion technology, and now 15, 20 years later, we're sitting on a fashion tech panel.
Finally. Finally, they are taking us seriously. No, I too started in the first internet boom. I worked in New York City, did lots of the big digital things, but always wanted to do fashion. So when that popped and we all went on to do other things, I went straight to fashion, did some of the earliest 3D fashion work for Hugo Boss and Calvin Klein around 2001. Had our own startup company, got really frustrated because there wasn't the backbone that we saw in other industries. And right about that time, the EU was starting to recognize that they needed to move towards fashion, and they created a PhD in the Marie Curies for fashion designers. And about 3 of us made it through it, but it was awesome that we finally have fashion designers that are respected as scientists within the EU. And more than that, we've taken that opportunity to move into schools like Amphi and build up the second best lab, and we're gunning for them. That can do 3D body scanning, can realize entire ecosystems. We work with companies, we work with students, we get entrepreneurs out of there, but we work really quickly to look at product service ecosystems. How do we build them and how do we get them out the door? and which ones are going to work, which ones are going to fail. Had a couple of failed startups myself and learned a lot of lessons there. There's some really great publications on the 12 things you need and the 6 things I didn't have. But if you're reading those now, what you're going to see is it's the 6 things we have available now. And that's the really interesting moment that we find ourselves in. And I spent the last decade, because it takes a decade to make an overnight success, working at the EU level, getting them to finally take us as textiles, 4th largest industry in the industrial network, seriously. And so they're finally creating programs like the Textiles of the Future that sets aside specific money for textiles and does the innovation with us. So it's a good moment, and it's taken 15 years, but we're there.
But as we also just heard before, it's it takes a long time to build an ecosystem and also to build a framework. And now it seems to be ready. But also on the other side, it's there's a movement coming. It's that towards it kind of feels like that the fashion and the fashion industry are so divided, but need to be unified by technology and infrastructure again. I mean, we're supposed to talk about microfactories. I'm throwing that to you, Fredrik. We looked at the map just before. I also wanted to acknowledge Fashion Innovation Center being the initiator of the Open Connector Alliance, which is going to facilitate this new European infrastructure. So where do microfactories, also to bust the myth a little bit, microfactories are going to be our savior in all of this?
Yes and no. Of course, as always, it's complex. But I would say that, first of all, like you mentioned, that it's very important to distinguish the difference between fashion and fashion industry. Now I will talk about the fashion industry. It's almost like a front end and a back end. In a way, and that's often how we talk about it internally. Both very important, but very, very different and very, very different problems, and they can solve very different tasks as well. And I also think unfairly a lot of pressure is put on especially young designers to solve the problem, which is a systematic industry problem sometimes that they can't solve because you're the front end. You can't solve back end problems. Just start with that. I think just make a distinction between them. What we did when we started MAP, because we realized that there was a problem in the value chain, to say the least. And we realized that the fashion industry lived in a bubble almost. So we reached out to other industries. We looked at the tech industry because we saw the numbers. Some numbers says that there's a 30 to 40% overproduction in fashion. Doesn't matter if it's 5%, that's still horrible. When we have companies like Flex, which is one of the biggest hardware manufacturers in the world, they make all the phones for Samsung, TVs for LG, that's the hardware manufacturer. And they have 0.002% overproduction. So we started to look in and we partnered up with them and looked at how do you do it? And then we realized as well that when you make a pair of headphones, there's a lot of textile. They do a lot of handwork and textile work, and they're actually really good at it and very efficient and have systems for it. So we started partnering up more and more and look at how do you do line production? How can you be so efficient? What types of system do you have? What of those systems can we transfer to the industry? How can you be so efficient with your logistics, for example? Can that be transferred? And we saw just with a logistics system, we worked with a big brand, a €4 billion revenue brand, that we could reduce the overproduction with up to 20% just with changing the logistics system. So then we saw okay, this is interesting. Let's reach out to other industries. So we started to reach out to telecom operators like Deutsche Telekom that we're working with right now, or T-System or T-Mobile. Flex, like I mentioned, traditional companies that creates factories for the tech industry, we realized that they sit with skills on how to do digital twins, etc., for line manufacturing. So all the boring work in the background. So we started talking to waste handlers. We started talking to logistic providers. Basically everything that the fashion don't want to do. So we do all the boring stuff and map them and then find ways to do data sharing because we need compliance. And as a young designer, you need to be able to just make an order, basically, and get data and compliance provided into that garment all the way from the logistic providers. You need to go to sorting station and just scan your garment. That data needs to be fetched from a database directly. So we started to look in how we can connect the dots with existing, because we realized all the solutions is actually out there. We don't need to innovate at the moment. It's not that much innovation. It's more about implementation, implementing system from other industries that solved a lot of these problems already. And then we also asked about, coming back to microfactories, how do you do manufacturing? And we realized that yes, microfactories can be a solution, but you also need different types of regional factories still, but outside the cities that might be bigger. So you have a bigger plant in Poland or Holland that can be distributed to a lot of people. You need smarter distribution hubs connected to bigger and smaller facilities, depending on what you do. So just basically copying how other industries already solved it. That's what we are doing at the moment.
So microfactories are a puzzle piece in a whole needed ecosystem, right? In the meantime, well, thank you very much. You're fixing the back end with tech transfer. Great. What are we going to do with the designers? Like, they need a home too, Mouhannad.
Yeah. So Fredrik often talk about the industry, the back end. I think from Flair and from the work that I work often with designers is that we're looking at the fashion side. We're looking at how we're talking to the designers. We're trying to understand how they work and how they can create their ideas. And I think often technology can be seen as a box. Once you box designers, I frankly think it's quite dangerous. Once you box the ideas and how you should make things and what technology you should be using, and you shouldn't be using fabric, you should be using Cloth 3D and We all know how innovative it is, but once you box the designers, it kills creativity, it kills innovation. And we've seen all the finalists from yesterday. I'm looking at two amazing finalists from yesterday as well, Silva, when looking at taking car parts and taking innovative fabric. How can you put a system to that? Like, how can you make a box where you say, yeah, this is how you're going to make things? I think that's kind of the dangerous thing. And I think one of the things that worked for us at London College of Fashion is that our lab wasn't something that we forced students to change their creative practice. It was more like an open access. This is a lab, this is a space, this is a hub. We have solutions, we have motion capture, we have 3D scanning, we have 3D printing. You come and you make, you play, we call it play. And that really, and in fact, actually one of the things that I think really connect with students is the inductions that we do throughout this. So every student that we have at SCF, we give induction. We give them a way for them to present all these technologies and how they can creatively use in their practice. And often when I present to students, I see a few light bulbs turning into one side of the room because they're interested in 3D printing. Another light bulbs turn into another technology. And then you can really see them connecting. I say, okay, I'm interested in doing car parks. Okay, what if I'm going to connect with photogrammetry and then allow my story to be told in a more immersive way? So this is really, I think, where the space that is needed in the industry is that kind of play hub, future lab, future hub, whatever we want to call it, where we can have the graduates, emerging designers, future brands coming and play and explore those technologies, and then they can innovate and they can tell us how they want to do things.
So do you understand correctly is that you're building a future lab in London which is accessible to also like outside LCF students? It's just like designers who need a place to meet, to build, access to technology, but just having a creative space.
That's exactly what we are building now with Flair Fashion. We are moving to the next step where we're trying to build a lab, a future lab that we can host not just students from SCF, but also graduates and emerging designers and brands, and potentially medium to large size brands as well, where they can come and together we can build solutions. The lab is not going to be just one partner and one. It's all about collaborations. We've been talking for the last couple of weeks about how we can bring all the partners together, and in the center there will be the brands, the designers. I think Christine mentioned very nicely is that we are all expecting emerging designers to change the world, but there's no support or funding or anything for them to be able to do that. And I think if we have a space where they can come and get the support from technology partners, from the manufacturers, from all the partners, putting them together in one room, say, here's one solution, feel free to do whatever you want. I think that's really the true innovation where it comes from.
Troy, I know we can talk about it for ages, but you're just here to talk about money and funding.
Money's good. Money makes it go.
because like, yeah, you know, we need like a different, you know, yes, we need an ecosystem back end who enables us. We need a place where we can engage and thrive, but also we need like, you know, the oil in the engine. Oh, that was not very sustainable metaphor, sorry.
The battery.
The battery, solar panels. Because like also the reason why very specifically we wanted to have you on stage is because you actually happen to work on an application for a European program for new emerging manufacturing.
So it'll be announced publicly next week, but they announced it at the conference on Monday, the European Technology Platform for Fibers, Clothing and Textiles, that there will be 10 million euros for local digital manufacturing, local to local, where the data is centralized, but the manufacturing is digital, or the manufacturing is local. Sounds a lot like a speed factory. And that the cooperation is happening throughout Europe. So this is a beautiful moment to find companies that are doing parts of what you do in other European countries and to put them together, because for the first time in forever, or actually ever in the European program, we have a program called Textiles for the Future, and it is providing funding for us to experiment with systems like this and show Europe how to do it. So the bootstrapping is here, the kickstarting is here. We're ready to go. We're putting together calls for this, where we can actually join together with, you know, the fabricant who does AI stuff for fashion in Amsterdam, but to get together with Sweden and Italy and Portugal and London, because they're back in, thank God, and actually put these systems together. So please reach out to these partners to get ready for these calls that'll come out next week, because we finally have an opportunity to be part of that European ecosystem and really respected at the EU level.
And I think that was a mic drop. Right, there's nothing more. Thank you very much. We will have a couple of time for questions. I know we're running awfully late, but yeah. But like, see, it's like, so there's a lot of coordination happening, and also is, you know, even like half outside, inside. It's like that. This is why we all started to work together under the umbrella of the Open Connector Alliance. It's like that we need to coordinate and we need to bridge, because in a collaboration we can unlock funding and we can provide infrastructure. Yeah, so and now we're walking the talk, because if we would have sat here for, you know, a couple of years ago, all of this infrastructure wouldn't existed. There was no funding, public funding for specifically textiles and manufacturing. Like, also to say it's not only creative industries, it's very specific, because it proves that the research has been done, that we need infrastructure in manufacturing. I knew you would start on that because you're in manufacturing. So how can we bring US in?
Well, my question is to touch upon what you were all touching upon earlier. How do we evolve past these performative labs and move into actual industry collaboration and adoption of new technologies?
I'll start quickly. The funding that's out there is not for the research innovation action, it is the industry innovation action. So we as research institutes can help with the research that is developed, but this is for getting companies off the ground. There's cascade funding there. We're going to support, at least in the one I'm writing, 18 companies get up and running with this.
Also, this is very unique, is because usually EU funding is like research. There's a big shift also in Europe. It's like we need to transition research as quickly as possible into business. Europe has been statistically very shitty with that. Yeah. Because we all then left. Like, remember, you start a company, you need to grow, and then you end up in the US. Yeah. You don't have that option anymore. So that is very important. So just...
Can I just reinforce that really quick? Zellerfeld, who's doing the 3D printed shoes, I helped them out a lot, because I did this company 10 years ago and it failed, but they just got 16 million from Peter Thiel. So the Americans are coming for it. So we have to find a way to do it ourselves.
And I also think that from my perspective and working with the industry, what we need to do is, most of these other industries that I'm talking about, logistic companies, tech manufacturers, etc., of course don't want to switch industries most of the time. They're very afraid of that. They're very happy where they are. So we need to model the business model so that they fit as closely as possible. So for example, shipping. Yeah, you're shipping this now. Could you also ship clothes? And that might sound like, of course they can ship clothes. No, the first thing we noticed with the logistic providers was that, but that's soft things. Well, first we didn't understand them. What do you mean? It's soft things. It's soft. We're not used to that. So even that little change, we had to like model, like, okay, can we do a test? Could you see if it's frightening or not? So I mean, for scaling purposes, so we need what you are talking about, all of these new innovation, new companies, but we also need the old industry that already is really good at doing stuff, but in other areas. And we need to help them understand that you need to do a small move, and there is a business potential in a new industry. So that's because it's money in the end, unfortunately.
I just wanted to point on that is there's Olaf. Olaf is here. Yeah, because we had a conversation yesterday. It's like that, especially in Munich, for instance, it's like seen as also like a tech hub, right? But also like that fashion can actually be like with combination of technology actually can contribute to the prosperity of the Munich region. You know, Nachhaltigkeit durch Technik. Kind of, but like, yes.
I think it's very hard to ask patient because all what you're talking about, that are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pages to read and to understand.
Yeah.
I think now I would first have one question. How are working really as a fashion designer in this room? Okay, 4 or 5 people. Yeah. What you say there are a lot of opportunity and there's founding money. How big the companies have to be to get the money?
Okay. You first. Yeah.
Quickly, we are looking at an industry that is 98.5% micro SMEs. That is less than 10 people. On average, it's 2.6 people. We're happy to work with the people who are 2.6 people because statistically,
able to get an Antrag at the EU to get the money.
No, it's joint. That's the whole idea. It's like you can't do this alone. This is why this collaboration has to happen. And like also like the big change, what happened in the last years is that these specific calls are now built for very small companies. One of the issues what we have several years ago is that it was in Europe, it was always SMEs, like small, medium-sized enterprises. In the creative industries, it's actually in S before the S, it's single or solo. So that means like there was a whole infrastructure which wasn't being able to be supported technically by grants. That has changed in the last couple of years. And then if you look into the grants of Creative Europe and Culture Creative KIC, K-I-C, community, KIC, K-I-C, their funds, the way how they structured fund are very much based on the understanding of the industry, and that is a big change. I know, like, that was also like, oh, you can't do this as a small company. Really look into this cause, but you have to collaborate. And collaboration needs coordination, and that's why we need certain kind of alliances work on that. Yes?
No, but I as my own, and I just wanted to transfer. That's okay. That's super.
But I also think I just need to add that being part of an alliance, especially with universities, often having a university as a lead into this, because these applications are super hard. So I understand as a designer or single designer going into EU application, which I think you pointed a little bit at, like how the heck are we going to get that money? I think that the easiest way is often to look at what calls are out there and who are applying for it. And then you become part of that alliance as a part of the project. So you don't have to do the application, because doing the application, don't do that. You should do design. Don't go into EU application stuff like it if you're a small company, because that's a huge task. But being part of a project and being a beneficiary of the big budget that all of these partners get, that's much, much easier. And that's also more in line with what you're doing. And then you're doing a specific part in the project that you already is interested in and doing.
Final words.
Just want to say, I agree that, we need to collaborate and we need to be working together to be able to apply for these things. But we also have to recognize there is a problem for having those EU funded and UK funded or whatever, big government funding bodies. There is a problem with creative industry accessing those funds. I know for a fact, I'm talking about UK specifically with Innovate UK. They have this issue where there's a lot of funding, but there's not enough applications or enough people applying, because often they think it's going to be too much paperwork and it's not worth my time and things like that. So there is a problem, and I hope there should be a solution in the future. I don't have that solution, but
all of kinds to help.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
And I think also like this is a very good fitting job also for associations like, the German Fashion Council, the European Fashion Alliance. It's like you need, when you look into other industries, you need these alliances to coordinate funding. It's not like that the money comes from these organizations, but like doing the project management and creating pools and rooms where you can coordinate.
Where can everyone find you? Because obviously everyone in office can continue this conversation.
Say it where else.
Yeah.
What is Fashion Innovations .center? So fashioninnovation.center.
Flair.fashion. Just Flair.fashion, but I'll be around, so happy to talk to all you.
Yeah.
newtexico.nl, new textile ecosystems.nl.
Excellent. Also, like, just talk to each other.
Yeah.
All
right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Fantastic moment.